S. Sashverul, the iron door or blower to the mouth of his stove from a divine of that name, who made himself famous for blowing the coals of dissension in the latter end of the reign of Queen Anne. Sack, a pocket, to buy the sack, to get drunk, to dive into the sack, to pick a pocket, to break a bottle in an empty sack, a bubble bet, a sack with a bottle in it, not being an empty sack. Sad dog, a wicked, debauched fellow, one of the ancient family of the sad dogs. Swift translated into Latin by the words tristis canis. Saddle, to saddle the spit, to give a dinner or supper. To saddle one's nose, to wear spectacles, to saddle a place or pension, to oblige the holder to pay a certain portion of his income to someone nominated by the donor. Saddle sick, galled with riding, having lost leather. Saint, a piece of spoiled timber in a coachmaker's shop, like a saint, devoted to the flames. Saint Geoffrey's Day, never there being no saint of that name. Tomorrow come never, when 2 Sundays come together. Saint Luke's bird, an ox, that evangelist being always represented with an ox. Saint Monday, a holiday most religiously observed by journeymen, shoemakers, and other inferior mechanics, a profanation of that day by working is punishable by a line, particularly among the gentle craft. An Irishman observed that this saint's anniversary happened every week. Sal, an abbreviation of salivation, in a high sal in the pickling tub or under a salivation. Salesman's dog, a barker, vide barker. Salmon gundy, apples, onions, veal or chicken, and pickled herrings. Minced fine and eaten with olive oil and vinegar. Some derive the name of this mess from the French word selen mongost, because the proportions of the different ingredients are regulated by the palate of the maker. Others say it bears the name of the inventor, who was a rich Dutch merchant, but the general and most probable opinion is that it was invented by the Countess of Salmagondi, one of the ladies of Mary de Medicis, wife of King Henry IV of France, and by her brought into France. Salmon or Salomon, the beggar's sacrament or oath. Salt, lecerus, a salt bitch, a bitch in heat, at heat, or proud bitch. Salt eel, a rope's end used to correct boys, etc. At sea, you should have a salt eel for supper. Sammy, foolish, silly. Sandwich, ham, dried tongue, or some other salted meat, cut thin and put between 2 slices of bread and butter. Said to be a favourite morsel with the Earl of Sandwich. Sandy pate, a red-haired man or woman. Sangaree, rack punch, was formerly so called in Bagnius. Sank, Sankey, or centipede, a tailor employed by clovers in making soldiers' clothing. Sapskull, a simple fellow, sappy, foolish. Satire, a libidinous fellow, those imaginary things that are by poets reported to be extremely salacious. Saucebox, a term of familiar raillery, signifying a bold or forward person. Save-all, a kind of candlestick used by our frugal forefathers to burn snuffs and ends of candles, figuratively boys running about gentlemen's houses in Ireland who are fed on broken meats that would otherwise be wasted. Also a miser. Saunterer, an idle lounging fellow, by some derived from sans terre, applied to persons who, having no lands or home, lingered and loitered about. Some derive it from persons devoted to the Holy Land, Saint Terre, who loitered about as waiting for company. Saw, an old saw, an ancient proverbial saying. Sawney or Sandy, a general nickname for a Scotchman, as Paddy is for an Irishman, or Taffy for a Welshman. Sawney or Sandy being the familiar abbreviation of diminution of Alexander, a very favourite name among the Scottish nation. Scab, a worthless man or woman. Scald miserables, a set of mock masons who AD 1744 made a ludicrous procession in ridicule of the Freemasons. Scalder, a clap. The cull has napped a scalder, the fellow has got a clap. Scaly means sordid. How scaly the cove is, how mean the fellow is. Scaly fish, an honest, rough, blunt sailor. Scamp, a highwayman. Royal scamp, a highwayman who robs civilly. Royal foot scamp, a footpad who behaves in like manner. To scamper, to run away hastily. Scandal broth, tea. Scandal-proof, one who has eaten shame and drank after it, or would blush at being ashamed. Scape-gallows, one who deserves that and has narrowly escaped the gallows. A slip-gibbet, one who for whom the gallows is said to groan. Scapegrace, a wild, dissolute fellow. Scarce, to make oneself scarce, to steal away. Scarlet horse, a high red hired or hack horse, a pun on the word hired. Scavy, sense, knowledge, massa, meno, scavy. Master, I don't know. Negro language. Perhaps from the French scavia. Scheme, a party of pleasure. Schism monger, a dissenting teacher. Schism shop, a dissenting meeting house. A scald's cure, a coffin. The blowen has napped the scald's core. Cure, the bitch is in her coffin. School of Venus, a bawdy house. School butter. Cobbing, whipping. Sconce, the head, probably as being the fort and citadel of a man from sconce, an old name for a fort derived from a Dutch word of the same signification, to build a sconce. A military term for biking one's quarters, to sconce or sconce, to impose a fine academical phrase. Scot, a young bull. Scotch greys, lice. The headquarters of the Scotch greys, the head of a man full of large lice. Scotch pint, a bottle containing 2 quarts. Scotch bait, a halt and a resting on a stick, as practised by pedlars. Scotch chocolate, brimstone and milk. Scotch fiddle, the itch. Scotch mist, a sober soaking rain. A Scotch mist will wet an Englishman to the skin. Scotch warming pan, a wench, also a fart. Scoundrel, a man void of every principle of honour. Scour, to scour or scour off, to run away, perhaps from the score, i.e. full speed, or as fast as legs would carry one. Also to wear, chiefly applied to irons, fetters, or handcuffs, because wearing scours them. He will scour the derbies, he will be in fetters. To scour the cramp ring, to wear bolts or fetters, from which, as well as from coffin hinges, rings supposed to prevent the cramp are made. Scourers, riotous bucks who amuse themselves with breaking windows, beating the watch, and assaulting every person they meet, called scouring the streets. Scout, a college errand boy at Oxford called a gyp. At Cambridge, also a watchman or watch cunt. Scragged, hanged. Scraggy, lean bony. Scraggum fair, a public execution. Scrap, a villainous scheme or plan. He whittles the whole scrap. He discovers the whole plan or scheme. Scrape, to get into a scrape, to be involved in a disagreeable business. Scraper, a fiddler, also one who scrapes plates for mezzo-tinto prints. Scraping, a mode of expressing dislike to a person, or sermon, practised at Oxford by the students in scraping their feet against the ground during the preachment, frequently done to testify their disapprobation of a proctor who has been, as they think, too rigorous. Scratch, old Scratch, the devil, probably from the long and sharp claws with which he is frequently delineated. Scratchland, Scotland. Scratch platter or tailor's ragout. Bread sopped in the oil and vinegar in which cucumbers have been sliced. Screen, a banknote. Queer screens, forged banknotes. The cove was twisted for smashing queer screens. The fellow was hanged for uttering forged banknotes. Screw, a skeleton key used by housebreakers to open a lock. To stand on the screw signifies that a door is not bolted but merely locked. To screw, to copulate, a female screw, a common prostitute. To screw one up, to exact upon one in a bargain or reckoning. Screw jaws, a wry-mouthed man or woman. Scrip, a scrap or slip of paper. The cully freely blotted the scrip and tipped me 40 hogs. The man freely signed the bond and gave me 40 shillings. Scrip is also a change alley phrase for the last loan or subscription. What does scrip go at for the next rest counters? What does scrip sell for delivered at the next day of settling? Scrobby, to be kept, to be tipped. The scrobby, to be whipped before the justices. Scrope, a farthing cunt. Scrub, a low mean fellow employed in all sorts of dirty work. Scrubabado, the itch. Skull, a head of a house. Head of a house, or master of a college at the universities. Scull or sculler, a boat rowed by one man with a light kind of oar, called a scull. Also a one-horse chaise, or buggy. Skull-fatcher, a peruke maker. Scum, the riff-raff, tag-rag and bobtail, or lowest order of people. Scut, the tail of a hare or rabbit, also that of a woman. Scuttle, to scuttle off, to run away. To scuttle a ship, to make a hole in her bottom in order to sink her. Sea crab, a sailor. Sea lawyer, a shark. Sealer, or squeeze wax, one ready to give bond and judgment for goods or money. Secret, he has been let into the secret. He has been cheated at gaming or horse racing. He or she is in on the grand secret, i.e. dead. Seedy, poor, penniless, driver, cramped, exhausted. Sees, the eyes. See daylights. Served, found guilty, convicted, ordered to be punished or transported to serve a cull-out, to beat a man soundly. Seraglio, a bawdy house, the name of that part of the Great Turk's palace where the women are kept. Send, to drive or break in. Hand down the jemmy and send it in. Apply the crow to the door and drive it in. Set, a dead set, a concerted scheme to defraud a person by gaming.